Dystrybutorem rozwiązań marki Blackmagic Design w Polsce jest firma New Media AV.
Dzień dobry, nazywam się Paweł Maziejuk z New Media AV. Jesteśmy w tym momencie na ISE 2026, a z nami jest Greg z Blackmagica i chcieliśmy powiedzieć nieco na temat nowości, które można zobaczyć w Barcelonie. Jedną z takich wspaniałych nowości jest ten mikser i cały ekosystem związany z nim, o którym opowie nam Greg. Greg, thank you for being with us. Can you say generally about what's new, what's nice at Blackmagic? And Blackmagic this year is the main sponsor of ISE 2026.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to have you here. ISE is a great show for us. We get to see lots of different people and lots of different usage. And one of the most popular products we've ever had were the ATEM Minis. So they were released in 2019 and they've introduced a lot of new things, like for example the webcam output. They were some of the first products to have the Fairlight audio page. What I really like about this range is that the name is a bit misleading. They're not mini live production switchers, they're incredibly powerful live production switchers. Case in point, the latest version of the ISO G2 brings many of the features that we've already shown in other models, but we are innovating again and again and again. This model brings a couple of new things that are really interesting, and one of which is really important for me is replay. So the ability to have an integrated support for recording, generating growing media, and actually playing that media on air. So it doesn't stop at just sports replay, because growing media is a very broad technology that allows many usage. So you could, for example, start to create your highlights or start to create a recap for a podcast. All of this is built into the device. So you have a new dedicated capture and output card, you have a dedicated CF Express port, a 10 gigabit Ethernet interface to be able to access those files super quickly. It's a slightly new form factor. You have a new Fairlight page for you to be able to monitor and control the device. So it brings a lot of many new things into the ecosystem. But more importantly, in my opinion, very, very good basis for a very powerful workflow. And that's what we want to showcase. It's the workflows that we're able to do nowadays.
Greg, so you say that we can record on this switcher all of the inputs. We can basically do all of configuration of the audio. We have 8 inputs, 8 HDMI inputs, and as far as I know, there's also a streaming inputs, not only streaming output that is available, but also streaming inputs. How that works?
You have very good information. So the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO G2 takes back what we already had with the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO G1. So 8 HDMI inputs. We also have 3 HDMI outputs. We have the Thunderbolt interface. We have 2 USB-C ports. And within on this, so yes, you're right, we are recording all of the inputs isolated, if you will. We also record the program. And built into this model, something that we've introduced with the ATEM Television Studio HD8 ISO was effectively 8 ATEM streaming bridges built in. So ATEM streaming bridges are little boxes that you would add to your system, and they were able to receive Blackmagic Design encoded stream, either RTMP or SRT, and output that to HDMI or SDI. Really easy to integrate into your workflow. You could get a feed from an ATEM Mini, for example, from a camera. And so that gives you like a lot of options. And again, that's yet another workflow. So this comes in with 8 streaming decoders built in. So you will have to sacrifice an HDMI input when you want to receive a feed. But the great thing about this is that the encoder is available in many of our products. So you'll get studio cameras, cinema camera 6K, Ursa Broadcasts, Pixis even, and Ursa Cines even. You also get the streaming encoders. You could send the feed from another ATEM Mini Pro, for example, which means that you could have a studio here or maybe in Germany you have a studio, or in Poland you have a studio that does the main coverage of the ISE, but you'd have a tiny studio here sending you a remote live feed in real time. So you get lots of these options to create as intricate and as complex a workflow you want to have.
Greg, so there's like a lot of ways you can input device here, a lot of things to configure that. where would you place that switcher? I mean, for who that might be an interest, because again, we're in the world of ISE. Many AV customers are looking into maybe their own productions. What's the use case for that?
I think if you look at this product, it's very hard to say because it's hard to see a position where it wouldn't work. I would say that there are like more usage than there are. So it's an incredible toolbox because of all the features and the intelligence you have around. But I would say that this would cater really well for corporations that want to actually own their own means of communication and media creation.
So like podcast studios that they might do
Yeah.
something for their internal communication or outside communications.
Absolutely. You could do podcast production quite well. You could do live event management with this, like small conferences. You could do, live music shows. And again, this integration with DaVinci Resolve is incredibly useful because while you're able to actually have the growing media, work with this and output like a replay, you can also look at this as you already creating the content for your next step of post-production. So you could create the highlights of your game. You could create a recap of an interesting moment in the podcasts. You could rework it because maybe you've missed, you have a top-down shot for a demo, like a product demonstration. Maybe you've missed that in your edit, or in your live setup. You can rework that. So it's very hard to find a place where this wouldn't work because you have such an enormous amount of features and practical features well integrated that it could work for many, many products. But obviously comes the amount of inputs that's going to limit you to what you can do with it. But again, I think this product is really well catered for the public at ISE. Live event, corporation, podcast, content creation. Even if there are ways where basically people want it unattended behind the wall and they want just to record the 8 feeds and have those feeds available on the network because this will do that. You will be able to actually fetch the files that it has recorded through the network. So think about education. Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, you're just recording classrooms and you do whatever you want with it. You publish it anywhere you want. But maybe the rest of the week, it's more of a conference-like stuff. And then basically you can put people behind the ATEM and behind the cameras and then you have a full production. So I think its usage and its potential is very broad because it gives you a lot of options and a lot of features to work with.
So the switcher records every single input that comes into the switcher, and we can have those recorded media via 10G connectivity, 10G Ethernet, and also there's a card slot inside of that. So one of the use cases that you mentioned is the podcast studios, which also requires a lot of audio intense processing, and you need actually quite amount of audio inputs. How do you cope with that?
One of the reason to actually go for a larger form factor allows us to put a couple of XLR inputs at the back. So right off the bat, even if you don't do anything internally in the ATEM, you still have a means to actually get your main output from a dedicated mixer into the ATEM. That's much easier. Another thing that we've added on this model that started to make its appearance on other models is a MADI input. So I believe MADI stands for multi-channel audio digital interface. It's not an old standard, but it's not a recent standard either. It's well known. We have a couple of converters that are incredibly practical called the ATEM microphone converters. These will take 4 XLR inputs, line, mic level or 48 volt phantom power, and output that in MADI. Where these are really powerful, and just behind you there, you can daisy chain them. So you can add 4 input on the first one and get the MADI output into the input of the second, and then another 4, and so on and so forth. The ATEM Mini ISO G2 will manage 32 extra channels. So that gives you an enormous dimensioning. The other thing that the ATEM does really well is, thanks to the Fairlight audio engine, each and every track, whether they come from the cameras, whether they come from the XLR, or whether they come from MADI, can have their own 6-band parametric EQ, compressor, limiter, gate, and expander.
So if I will click this one, I will have the full overview of all the audio channels and full control over all the audio that comes into the switcher.
That's one of the new features, and it doesn't stop there because you have also the ability to actually have a look at and control some other things. So this Fairlight HDMI output is fairly recent. That's the first time we're seeing it here. And it gives you, as you said, perfect overview of what's going on at a given time. It's really useful, and you can manage your audio.
That's really great and powerful small little mixer. Is there anything else that is relevant to our AV customers that you're highlighting here as Blackmagic?
Blackmagic has about 305 products in the catalog, and I'm pretty confident that out of those 305 products, there are probably 200 products that work for this market, because we are really good at the glue, we're really good at managing signals, routing them, managing them, editing them. There is a well-installed technology in the broadcast industry, which is SMPTE 2110. I think SMPTE 2110 is an incredible opportunity for AV as well. I was mentioning the ability of having a single network backbone on which you can connect anything you want, anywhere you want, and being able to route those signals anywhere you want in an incredibly seamless manner, without compression and without latency. I think the broadcast industry is moving towards this, first off because it's been developed by SMPTE, which is the same guys that have done SDI. And SDI in and of itself as a technology is very good, because if you have something that outputs 3G SDI and something that can take a 3G SDI input, they'll work. In that continuation, SMPTE 2110 format is basically uncompressed video over network, but it gives you tremendous amount of flexibility. So you'll have something where you don't need as much patching, you can route anything wherever you want. And it also, in terms of, if you had like a large infrastructure, any third party that comes with 2110 equipment, you know that they're going to work with our infrastructure. They can plug in anywhere they want in your building and get their camera feed from anywhere else, which means that the setup time is shorter. The ability for you to monitor, to distribute those signals is much, much easier. It makes for a better infrastructure. So I think 2110 is going to be enormous for us. It's already a big product. I think people are really keen on it. And it's very interesting to see that ISE visitors are really interested. And a couple of years back, they were like, oh yes, but that's an expensive network. When they see the advantage of that technology, they don't say that anymore. They're like, oh, okay, I get it. It's very powerful. I can do pretty much whatever I want. So that would be one thing. And then we have smaller, newer products that are really interesting, like the iPod Shuttle 4K Pro. It's an iPod in and of itself, so it's a reader and recorder, but it's a different form factor, and that can be really useful for integrators and people that want to, again, have a very simple interface, because it's basically just play, pause, you have a little shutter that allows you to move the stuff. It's really easy to use. It actually, to me, it reminds me a bit of like the controls that you had on a VTR or a VHS reader. So I quite like this. It's pretty, it's good to look at, and it's easy to use. So I think that could be useful for many of our visitors. So there's plenty to see, plenty to know. ISE is coming to an end. It was an incredible show, but I tell you what, like next year we'll have more things. So you need to come back and we can talk about newer things.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Greg. Thank you
so much for your time. Have a good day.
Thank you. Have a great day.